Hosted in conjunction with CRIISP Media, the CEO interview series allows investors to hear directly from the CEOs leading the companies featured on Wholesale Investor. Enjoy the interview and reach out via the details in the description.
Hi and welcome to another episode of CRIISP Q&A. Today I'm joined by Joshua Bayley, the CEO and founder of EduNow. Thank you for joining me, Joshua.
Thank you for having me.
Josh, just to get started, a brief executive summary of exactly who EduNow is as a business for the audience who haven't heard of you before.
Yeah, so EduNow is a edtech startup. So what we do is we specialize in educational software. So what that essentially means is that we like to take technology and apply it to personalized learning to improve student outcomes.
Okay, so specifically around the problem you identified in the market, Josh, when you were setting this up, you must have seen something that motivated or spurred the intention to start this venture. Can you hone in on that so we have a clear understanding of why the market needs this?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was through uni, I was working as a tutor on the side. And what a lot of the time that I found was that there was a miscommunication between myself as a tutor and the student and the school. So most of the sessions were trying to get some sort of idea about what exactly the student needed help in, whether that was particular topics in math, where exactly their knowledge wasn't letting them understand the question, and what kind of milestones they'd missed previously. So what I then started to do was change my approach to say, all right, let's start to assess individual students, not against the curriculum, but against what they actually know and what they currently learn. And that was something that then I started to refine over time as I got more and more students. So essentially what the approach evolved into was creating these assessment profiles for individual students on a case-by-case basis, and then tailoring a learning plan based on the findings from that test. It then became quickly apparent that in order to grow this, we couldn't do it on such a fine scale. So we had to bring technology in somehow to help with scaling to make it more accessible to more and more students and to refine this process and make it a lot quicker.
And can I ask you, Josh, is these personalized education plans to bring them up to speed against what the gaps or knowledge gaps that they have currently? Is this an automated process or is this something that is quite manual? Do you mind explaining that a bit further?
Yeah. So that's correct. So what we do is we have now a automatic test that students can go through a assessment essentially. And that's kind of like a placement test. So what that does is it identifies competencies or components that they aren't fully up to scratch in. And then from what we can then do is it recommends certain modules that we as tutors, or what we can then send to schools, we can then send recommendations of what concepts or what subjects the students should then be able to focus on. So whether that be we take that individual back to grade 5 concepts if they're in grade 7 and then build it up from there, or if they need to review more material based on previous years or the current year that they're working on.
And Josh, is this built at this present moment for a specific syllabus and a specific curriculum? And is that why you're able to sort of predict where they need to go or place them with confidence in front of them, the modules they need to re-look and re-educate themselves on?
Yeah. So at the moment, being Australian-based, we've mapped it to the Australian National Curriculum. That is a general standard for all states to kind of follow. So if we map them to the national curriculum, then there's only small nuances on a state-by-state basis that need to be adjusted. So it's better to adapt students to the national curriculum versus the state. And what that then allows us to do is then get a kind of national overview and then map them against international standards. So we can start to understand we start to get a really good picture of where the student actually is sitting in terms of their competencies and their understanding. And then we can make pretty good recommendations based on that.
The fundamental idea of automating the process of identifying those knowledge gaps and then presenting information that will help them fill those gaps and progress them along the curriculum or the syllabus can obviously be applied to something beyond school curriculum. So is there any motive in the future to make this sort of an LMS for use of other online academies and academies out there at the moment?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head there. So the kind of long-term plan, like the long-term vision of EduNow is exactly that. So to start with a student base, so high school and primary school, that gives us a really good foundation to build upon. Once we have kind of those foundations in place, then we can start to map that to university curricula, or if there are kind of certain training facilities that need to be done through either a learning management system or student management system, so through universities or corporate environments, then that's something that we can start to adapt to once we have these foundations down pat.
That's great, and it's technology that I think a lot of people would be able to resonate with, especially when they're feeling that inadequacy as they're being tested and graded and examined. Not knowing where to go next can be difficult. So tell us about the market. The traction today. Any key metrics we should know? Any key milestones you've hit that would be good for the investor audience to understand about EduNow?
Yeah. So in terms of the market, what we've done thus far is we're still kind of in that stealth mode while we refine the technology and prepare it for kind of IP. So what we've done at the moment is we've continued on the market manual approach, and then we've used that in the back end to refine and train our platform. In terms of validation, so we've found success with this as a tutoring company. So we've had quite a successful year where we did start to earn an average of $957 on average, and that was an annual spend. And so what we found was that parents really saw the value in this one-on-one approach, where we were able to find and assess what their children were struggling with, and then we were able to make these really fine-tuned personal learning plans to not only build their knowledge but also their confidence in that subject. And what we've done then from that is been able to use this feedback and this validation to then work with, we're currently working with 3 schools in the Brisbane area. And what that has allowed us to do is gain teacher input, parent input, and student input.
So Josh, you mentioned the R&D that's going into this venture and the IP being established, and you're intending to protect this IP. And do you see this IP as protecting you against competitive forces in the long run?
Absolutely. So there are a couple of things that I can't go into too much detail about naturally, but there are a few things in our back-end approach that have set us apart to other companies that are already doing this. And the big thing that we try to focus on with our R&D is what we saw in the market were that a lot of these companies were very localized and had a very hard time scaling, and especially adapting to international markets and international curricula. So that has been the primary focus of our R&D, is to say, how can we take this approach, break it down into and make it as modular as possible so that we can scale it as quickly as possible and as rapidly as possible to international markets, both education and LMS.
Excellent. Well, Josh, I guess in terms of a parting question, what we'd love to understand is what the 6 to 12 month outlook is for EduNow, and what are some milestones we can anticipate you achieving as people who are interested in following this venture, or even prospective investors who will watch this later.
Yeah. So the next 6 to 12 months are probably the most exciting for me personally. So we've currently reached the limit that we can currently get to with our kind of research side of things. So in the R&D phase, we're now onto the D phase, so the development. So we've developed the prototype with the schools and with the student feedback. And so now we're beginning the development phase for the MVP. So that's going to be in market within 6 months. And that's then going to be used to kind of refine it and fine tune it over time. But it's going to be very exciting, especially once we get to that point where we can release it as a public domain. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. So in terms of the next 6 to 12 months, it's going to be the most exciting time for EduNow.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to following your journey, and congratulations on the adventure to date. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sidney.
And for those who are interested in knowing more, there will be details on the side of the screen to EduNow's deal room and the contact details for Joshua. Thanks, Joshua.
Thank you.